You know what I used to do? I used to do a cap full of Botanicare back in the day, 20 years ago, bloom and then soak my plugs in that. And just to give it a little bit extra phosphorus because of now what we're literally talking about, promoting a root. Now, again, as you mentioned, it's so complex. We literally can't say, because it's funny, we've dumbed it down in this industry and said, oh, it's for bigger flowers. Dude, we've literally just mentioned like everything. So at the end of the day, it's literally essential for just the general health and vigor of plants, period. Right?
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Jug Dealers Podcast. We're bringing you all things cannabis and lifestyle related, powered by 5/8 Distribution.
Yes, we're here in the Jug Den.
We are here in the Jug Den, and we got a lot of cool stuff to talk about today. We dropped our nitrogen episode, and we kind of been digging into the whole elements, minerals, nutrients, whatever.
As we said, it will be an ongoing theme. And I will say thanks got a lot of great feedback on the nitrogen episode. Thank you guys so much for having a listen. And in fact, I did, and again,
you had something you wanted to address right off the rip. I did want to address right off the rip.
In our efforts of transparency and understanding that we are not scientists, nor are we chemists. We're merely a couple of guys who really do love plants and love diving into things a little bit deeper. Sometimes it gets slightly beyond our comfort zone, but we're willing to do that. But anyway,
we're trying to get better too. I mean,
we're learning at the same time. There's a lot of things that through my experience and through some of my education and schooling, obviously I've learned and had the opportunity to continue to use, utilize, refresh, everything else. So a gentleman, a friend of ours, actually that Gabe and I both known for quite a while. And I have no problem.
We'll have him on the show at some point.
He'll be on. But a good friend of ours of the show and somebody that we respect a lot in this industry said, hey, here's a couple of critiques. And one of them in particular was I said something about calcium and iron being mobile in the plant, which in general they are understood as not mobile. I was talking more about the fact that they were secondary messengers and operate in different ionic forms. So it's really this exchange of electrons is one of the ways that, and really is the way that plants communicate with itself. So calcium operates as Ca2 plus and Ca3 plus, and then same thing with iron, Fe2 plus, Fe3 plus. So again, you know who you are, Garrett. Thank you.
Send the love.
And shout out to Garrett again. Great grower's been doing this for a long time. We've known him for a long time, and it was a good catch. Thanks for listening. We're always open to critiques, and so we wanted to address that one right off the rip. But we're going to really work into getting into phosphorus.
Yeah, phosphorus is the big element. We were trying to tackle the big three right off the rip.
And give them each their own show, because we believe that it's, they're worth their own time. I don't think we're going to go 17 shows deep with this.
No. Once we start getting into the micros, we'll start combining stuff.
Yeah, and even the secondary macros will probably put calcium, magnesium, and sulfur together. But anyhow, phosphorus, just as a base definition, it is a chemical element, has a symbol P, pretty obvious. NPK.
It's up there pretty high on the chart.
It's up there pretty high. Yeah, it's 15. Number 15. Mineral wise, phosphorus generally occurs as a rock phosphate.
So what does that mean to people? That basically means exactly what it
bedrock.
says. It's actually, it's in the earth and it's bedrock.
Which we're even gonna, a little bit later, we'll talk about how much is actually there. It's one of those things, it's very widespread, but it's sparse. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But I also think some of what people really think about, especially in our plant cannabis productions, the things that people will talk about or think about, the original kind of historic organic
I was going to say, let's get into, we like to break it down. So we're telling you, first off, how do people do it before we use fertilizer?
Right. How do we get phosphorus before? If it's generally a rock phosphate now, which we'll get into that process a little bit more and mined and how it's mined and processed. But how do we get that before we knew it was part of the Earth's crust?
So with nitrogen, it was the saltpeter. With phosphorus, a lot of people were using different types of manures, chicken manures, different guanos, horse manure. A lot of people have used bone meal. I can tell you from experience with bone meal, really hard to get out of the plant. Fish bone meal was always a good one. Fish emulsion,
good old worm castings.
Yeah, good old worm castings.
And I would say in our industry outside of vegetable production, really guano and worm castings, which and probably fish emulsion being number 3 because of availability, depending on where you're at locality wise. I'd say those would be the top three, really, really heavily and commonly used, forms of organic nitrogen.
And also you would see rock phosphate. People would use ground up basalt, granite, rhyolite. One thing people need to take notice with these is they all take time to be available. I remember when I first was real young in my 20s and I wanted to get into organic farming, and chicken manure was always the one where you would add it in the veg stage.
Sure.
So it was available 2 months later.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's just one of those things where that is definitely something that's different with organics.
Well, there's time and there's energy, right?
Yeah.
So the plant has to put energy into it. There is a time process where, even like with nitrogen, as we discussed, how the bacteria actually eat it up to begin with. And then when they die, the nitrogen becomes available in their nitrogenous bases, their DNA and RNA. So that's the thing. It is time and it is effort, but again, we know phosphorus is one of the three main NPK, and it's something that is, very, it's very key. And again, that's why it's a macro, but it's key to vegetal development in really a multitude of different plant processes.
So, let's get into,
but let's back up a little bit to how it's formed.
Let's actually go back.
Try and move through this a little bit.
After, people, once we started getting into large scale production, we had to start figuring out we're not producing enough of these guanos and stuff to make it really viable.
Well, and those are also, finite resources, right? How can we get it on more of a macro scale for, agricultural production, for, agronomics? So
basically what we started doing was we started looking around, we started mining. And basically when you start mining, you got to see how it's formed in the earth and where the deposits are. A lot of these deposits, they come from 20-year-old seabeds. So, and a lot of what it is it's old sea creatures. It's their bones and teeth compressed over millions of years.
Right.
And so
kind of wild, right?
Yeah, it is.
Dino bones, baby.
It's actually pretty cool. It's funny because you think about not to plug early, but you think about the appetite and how it has the dino bones.
Right.
Like,
that's and
maybe
so, that was on purpose.
And when you start looking at it, it's not just this layer that's down there. It's kind of a layer that's mixed with sand. It's mixed with clay. And so what they end up doing is, there's certain places in the country, 75% of the phosphorus that is mined in the United States actually comes from Central Florida, a place called the Bone Valley.
Right. Which is this like tar pit, right?
And so it used to be underneath the sea. And when the sea levels receded and this rose, all these sea creatures got trapped there. And like I said, it's not like this layer. It's, so anywhere between 20 and 100 feet down, depending on where you're at.
Right.
I know in North Carolina, it's 100 feet down. In Florida, it's 20 feet down.
Right, and that's going to depend, obviously, on a lot of the geology and what happened. Overburden and what's going on in like the glacial history and things like that.
And so what happens is they get down to this layer that's called the matrix, and it's a third. And what they do is they take these big drag lines, they pull it out of the earth, and then they mix like a slurry, and they send it out through these, I want to say 12-inch lines, and they send it out to the factory. Then at the factory, they mix it with sulfuric acid.
Yeah.
And with the sulfuric acid, they have these big mixing devices, these paddles, and they almost air and train it. And the more they do it, the more that the phosphorus rises to the top, and they skim it off. And that's where they get this phosphate rock. Now, there's two different types of phosphorus in the earth. There's white
and red,
and red. And the way it got its name was actually, I think, from the Greek for phosphorus, which basically phosphorescence, which basically meant light. The white phosphorus is what produces the light. And so that's the way we kind of got to that. And then when you start going through the process, they separate all these different things. They mix it with the sulfuric acid. You end up getting phosphoric acid, which is created. And that becomes the basis for most of our phosphorus fertilizers.
Well, and again, and without going into a whole lot of detail, I think the only reason and point to go into the detail is just showing this is a big mechanical process. So not only is it
a lot of work,
is it a lot of work pulling it out of the earth, but there's a lot of work, effort, time, money, et cetera, that's put in after the fact. Right. And these are finite resources, which the organic forms, that's finite as well, right? These are things that we knew, oh shit, like back guano is like, it's a finite resource. Bats are only going to be pooping, so much. So So whether it is mined or an organic form, really both of them are finite.
Yep.
And truthfully, a lot of things, as far as best estimate goes, based on, because you really only have a few states that it even comes from. Florida, you mentioned, you got North Carolina, you got Idaho, you got Georgia, Montana, Utah, South Carolina. Those are the main producers.
The biggest mine is actually in North Carolina. It was actually really, one thing I really enjoy about putting these episodes together is I do a bunch of research to put this together. So we're not, touting a bunch of crap and
as much as possible.
And it's interesting to see the process and how they do it and what, you always hear. I don't know how much any of our listeners kind of dig into it, but you hear that phosphorus is a finite resource.
Right. And so from what I read and what I looked into, the best estimates are saying it'll be ran out by
50,
the end of
60 years.
Yeah. End of the 21st century. At best, right? So we're at, 2023, at best you got, 77 years.
Well, one of the things,
if it gets to the end of the 21st.
Well, one of the things that's actually kind of interesting about phosphorus as well is, this is kind of where we're starting to dig into it, moving into the episode, is the fact that phosphoric acid, which is something that is basically what most of us use as a pH down.
Right.
Ironically enough, especially I know for our crop and for a lot of crops, once you get below 5.5, it's not really available to a lot of other crops.
Right.
So you're using something that drives the pH down, but also is unavailable. So what I'm getting at is that there's a lot of excess phosphorus.
Well, and rarely is there actually, and we'll talk about this in a second, but rarely do you actually see true deficiencies of phosphorus. Yeah. It's there. You're just not making it available. So, but let's talk a little bit more of really what it means to plants. So that's a little bit of the mechanical aspect of it. That's a little bit of like, where the heck do we get it? Again, by no means that's our specialty. But really, and this is the only reason I like this, because I don't want to misspeak on this, because some of this stuff can get fairly technical, but phosphorus as one of the lead components of ATP, right? Which is the energy molecules, right? So that's adenosine triphosphate.
Yep.
Right. So
triphosphate.
We hear it right in there, right?
Yep.
So it provides the needed energy for cell multiplication. Phosphorus also allows for DNA formulation and growth, and it also helps the plant's respiration and photosynthesis, and is a key element in developing the plant's root system, which is one of the things that it's funny, because it really does coincide, which we'll see here in a little bit, locality of the actual phosphorus itself. And then the fact that it's like, you have to get it really close to the root for it to be uptaken. But phosphorus is hugely important into root growth.
100%,
so it's like,
100%.
it's kind of like, you could definitely screw that up in both directions.
And then here also, going,
which is pulled from Jeff Lowenfeld's Teaming with Nutrients.
Teaming with Nutrients. It also is a key element in cellular gatekeeping system and the cell membrane.
Right.
So, and Jaron, is quite keen to point out many, many times, we don't know a lot about what these things really, really do, because there's so many complex processes.
Right. And a lot of it comes down to even ratios. So it's not necessarily just phosphorus. It's like how much phosphorus and compared to nitrogen, how much phosphorus and compared to nitrogen and potassium. We know that phosphorus also promotes early shoot growth, speeds ground cover for erosion protection, enhances quality of fruit, vegetable and grain crops, and is vital to seed formation. Those, I think, are what people know most about phosphorus when it comes to cannabis production. We think more phosphorus, bigger flowers. We have bloom boosters. That's a common thing that's used.
I've known guys in the past who've actually phospholoaded their moms because they were going to cut clones.
Right.
Because the clones, if they have a buildup of phos, they're going to be quicker. They're going to be quicker to develop roots.
Right.
So when you have a specified mom room right before you're going to do it, mild phos,
I love it because bloom. You know what I used to do? I used to do a cap full of Botanicare back in the day, 20 years ago, bloom and then soak my plugs in that. And just to give it a little bit extra phosphorus because of now what we're literally talking about, promoting a root. Now, again, as you mentioned, it's so complex. We literally can't say, because it's funny. We've dumbed it down in this industry and said, it's for bigger flowers. Dude, we've literally just mentioned like everything. So at the end of the day, it's literally essential for just the general health and vigor of plants, period. Right. We can, figure out some of the things it does, like even when we get into potassium and its use in the guard cells and things like that with the stomata. That's one of the things that we really actually know that it does. But like, I even remember when I was in school for it, it kind of got to potassium and it was like, well, man, it just does like a lot of stuff. It's like, I was like, what do you mean? It's like, well, nitrogen does this, phosphorus does this, and like, potassium does everything else, So and okay, so we know what phosphorus does. What is not having phosphorus does? Well, lack of phosphorus stunts plant growth. Plants will develop smaller and less leaves that could then have brown spots. Consequently, smaller roots will also, as we said, then make the plants less drought resistant as well. And if they have smaller roots, we know more roots, more fruits. We know more surface area. We know more uptake, all that kind of stuff. We can actually control our drybacks when you have a proper, properly filled substrate, things like that. And the things you do see, although you rarely
But like,
do
yeah,
see
I was going to say, like I say,
Yeah.
well, and like I say to folks, I mean, if someone's going to hit me up and they're going to go, oh, well, I have a phosphorus deficiency, I'm going to say, well, what's your pH? What's your runoff?
Right.
What's your leachate? Because ultimately, that's going to be the first question. That's going to be the first place you're going to go, is you're going to go see what that runoff is. Because even if that runoff is even 5.7, you could be right kissing it. And the thing is, you could
be right there. You're right. You could be right there on the edge.
At that point, you could have certain cultivar that are sensitive. There are certain things I can tell you from my experience. Generally, I run 5.8 in veg. Once I get up to flower, I'm running
5.8, baby.
I'm running 6.0. Once I'm even in late flower, I'm in 6.2. A little bit higher. So
sure.
It's just one of those things.
I like creeping that up a little bit too,
where they get a little bit sensitive. It's going to really open up the channels on that phosphorus. But again, a certain cultivar, you're down at 5.8, 5.7, 5.6, especially 5.6. 5.5.
Sure.
You're going to start seeing those purple stems. You're going to start
exactly,
seeing
those are some of the subtle things. It really is. Stunting growth, purple stems, things like that, smaller flowers. That's the things you really see as far as an outward expression.
And if you're using a pH down in your juices and you're using a lot of it, you are adding phosphorus. So
you're always adding phosphorus. There's plenty there. There's plenty there.
You will see a buildup. So again, I encourage you, if you think you have a phosphorus deficiency, if you're seeing that stunted growth, the purple stems. Now, the one thing that's interesting is that I do see a lot more purple stem expression with the LEDs. And I don't always know that it's
I think this is something we will get in. There will be episodes we're going to specifically do on lighting, but I think that's a nice little teaser there because, we know that phenotype by definition is genotype plus environment, right? And that equals phenotype. So, if I'm changing the environment specifically within lighting, what kind of uptake differences are there going to be? What kind of signals are they going to get? What about when we put a new UV from DLI in there? What kind of pathways is that opening up? What are we doing there? But, the thing, and this is my favorite part actually, was kind of really, spinning this around because we know what the outward expression of phosphorus is, the stunted growth, these purple stems, but really what's truly happening. And it's funny because phosphorus is so associated with flowering and not vegging. And you think vegging and roots and everything else, but really nutrition is achieved through the roots that absorb phosphate ions that are dissolved into water. Okay. Why that matters is the efficiency of the phosphate nutrition is linked to the fineness of the material. So it has to be ground very, very, very fine to maximize surface area.
And that's where we talk about the quality of the material. You're constantly going to hear us saying, oh, well, everybody who says phosphorus is, that minerals are minerals, we don't agree with that. And that's really one of the reasons.
Well, that precision and localization of phosphate intakes is really, really important, right? Because depending on where are you getting it from, are you getting it from Florida? Are you getting it from Argentina? Are you getting it from Ukraine? I mean, where those deposits are, you have higher and lower concentrations of it, right?
Well, and even then, just from what I've seen with, some of the improvements that New Millennium has made at the plant, just the being able to mix certain things at a certain rate, like products that we, have been selling for years, you see all of a sudden they become thinner purely because of that blending process. The equipment's gotten better, but the truth of the matter is all that equipment costs a lot of money.
I know it does.
A lot of people don't want to spend that money. They're going to go, hey, this bag says that there's phosphorus in it. And realistically, when we're talking about it, it's on a microscopic level, much like we talk about the silicium and it being a monomer sized particle.
Right.
When you're talking about phosphorus and it's in the bag, a particle that's this big and this big, it's like Doesn't seem like it makes
Doesn't
much
seem
of
like
a
it's a big
difference,
deal, but really
to a plant being available.
and that availability in that surface area, right? And even like when you talk about sand, silt, and clay, and the difference in surface area of that, and these are soil particles, right? Those are the 3 soil particles, and everybody thinks that silt's got to be the smallest, but actually it's clay. Clay has the highest cation exchange capacity because it has the highest surface area because it's the finest material, but also because it's the finest material, it can become the most compact.
And that's why the NewMill, if you're using the old school NewMill, it has that colloidal clay in there.
Has a colloidal clay
and the colloidal
because
clay,
of the CEC.
Yep, and that's exactly why we put the colloidal clay in there, is because it increases that cation exchange capacity.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So like, and that's important because more cation exchange capacity means more vigor.
Right. And again, really just to work on wrapping this up, so fineness of the material for surface area, right, and availability, but also closeness to the roots, right? They can only move like 2.5 millimeters a day.
2.5 millimeters.
That's it. So, and again, so that goes back to like we were talking about, it either moves by mass flow, like something that's water soluble like nitrogen, or by diffusion, which is a chemical process that's slowly moving across. So the closer you can get it to the roots, the better, right? So that's obviously one of those things that's really important. And it's always, it's so interesting how everything connects, right? So the edge of young roots are the most efficient part to absorb phosphate. They go and look for phosphate ions by continuous extension. So the lack of phosphate can hinder roots development and in turn limit phosphorus absorption, right? So it's like literally this is all part and parcel. So very interesting.
So to put a nice little bow on it, let's tell people, generally what form, we told people what forms of nitrogen they're generally going to see.
We told people where it came from. We told how it's found. We told how it affects plants, which literally we've kind of decided, geez, it does a ton of different stuff.
Yep. So what forms of phosphorus are generally people going to see if they're going to look in their fertilizers?
Well, you're going to see pure rock phosphate, which is just, well, you can just straight P. Obviously, you can see phosphorus, just obviously P. And obviously, when you're going to see NPK, you'll see what's there, but it's what's in an available form. Typically, you also see P2O5 is the most common form, and that's the actual, that's how the plant absorbs it. It's absorbed as P2O5, which I believe is P2O5 minus, I think. Again, not a chemist here. These are just right off the top of my head. But obviously, not the only way that it's found in your fertilizer.
Yep. And then you got the H2PO4, which is the phosphate compounds.
Yep. So, you got, pure rock phosphate, as we discussed. The interesting thing about that is, and if we can, let's look at these statistics, and we might even put these on there because I find this is going to be a little bit thick. And so we might even just post this. No, up a little bit, Josh, please. Yeah, right there. Okay. So USGS estimated there was only 68 billion tons of world reserves left currently. That was in 17, meaning that, like we were talking about, the actual production of it peaked in 2011, meaning that they predict the reserves will be depleted before the end of the 21st century. So interestingly enough, it only compromises 0.1% of the Earth's crust, but it's everywhere. So again, the supply is vast, but it's very dilute.
Yeah, and you have to figure
which is crazy, right? You got to rip a lot of shit up.
Yeah, and
to get to what you're getting.
It was interesting to see the process because they have to go reclaim that land. Like basically when it comes to these big phosphorus mines, they have to go make them look the way they did
here in
before.
the U.S. Let's be clear about that. Real quick.
And be clear. We use native phosphorus. We use that's part of what New Millennium stands behind, is using a lot of these native and suppliers,
right? And obviously, so we talked about the process and stuff, so we can even. So as we look right here, PK appetite, right? So as we've talked about all these things, even the fact that it's got the rocks on there, it's got the dinosaur stuff, that's definitely nods to what we're trying to say it is. And if you look at it's only 0.6.9. So what that is a companion product. So what it does, it's a soft rock mineral, which you can look it up, APATITE. So that's not a misspelling.
No, it's actually funny. When I was doing the research, they were talking about phosphorus appetite, and I was oh, dude,
remember, and then awesome. Even when we were in Chicago, we went into the Field Museum, and they had the mineral collection. So we had to chase us down some appetite. So
it's actually pretty cool.
Some of those pics. In fact, Josh, I think if not, I think those are in the Jug Dealer folder.
We did send the photos of it.
If not, we'll get some cool appetite photos out there. But again, What apatite is it's a soft rock mineral that's a natural P and K chelate. So what this is going to do is go into your recipe and pull up the available phosphorus and potassium that's there and make it more uptakeable.
Yep.
So whether it's out of the bases or whether you couple it with a bloom booster, like let's say Green Sensation or something like that. So it's not a bloom booster in and of itself. That's why we like to think of it as more of a companion product.
I'll be honest with you.
This is a sleeper. This is a sleeper of the line.
So
man.
I'll be honest with you. I had, back in the day, I would say probably maybe even 10 years ago, I tried to hit my plants with an early Phos shot of Bloombastic.
Sure.
And I just destroyed the room. And if, for those of you who don't know, like if you hit them too early with Phos, they'll ripen up in like 40, 45 days. So like this room was just.
So it didn't even get the chance to develop.
It didn't get and with this stuff, so what I do, and I've talked to Brandon, we've had people out in California do it, but what I do is, coupled with the decision, I actually start using this stuff at day 12. Sure. At 2 mils a gallon, and you will see earlier flower set. You will see bigger
and what he
flower
means
set
in conjunction with decision, it's not used at the same time. What he's saying is by using decision and getting that earlier flower set, and there's you can start using a product like this earlier in their flower
thing
cycle.
that we sell. This thing is just decision is, and not for nothing. There's a lot of companies that want you to just follow the directions, do whatever you do. And you're going to come out fine. And that's great. I'm not against any of that stuff. We're kind of giving you the keys to a Ferrari. And I've definitely seen people, when it comes to people like Phil Haig, where they drifted around the turns. We've talked to people with the decision who are using the decision. What did you got guys in Europe who were using it like what, day 30?
Well, yeah. And in fact, it's week 4 and week 6 at 5 mils a gallon along with bases. And it's basically used as a hardener to get some of those same kind of PGR aspects because over there, a lot of that pack low use was rampant.
Bro.
So
we
are completely clean, nothing tests dirty.
Even us as even these guys as the creators, they would never have thought of using it like that. And so it's one of those things where it's definitely interesting to see, you give people a product, but I will say, you're able to, because it's so mild, you're able to use this stuff. Literally, you see a good flower set, day 12, use it very low dosage, 2 mils a gallon.
Yeah, I like that 2 mils in 2 weeks. I like that myself too.
When those guys out in Cali hit me back, they were like, dude, we're seeing day 21 growth on day 17. You know what I mean? And again, the nice thing about it is very low parts per million. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, again, 0.6.9. It's almost no EC.
It doesn't matter whose nutrient
companion
line
product
you're using. And when you smell it, it just has a really nice smell. And like I always say to folks, grass-fed cattle, corn-fed cattle, they taste the way they do because of what they're fed, and this stuff
a lot of high quality inputs.
It gives a really nice flavor profile, and honestly, it's not even that it gives it a flavor profile; it helps accentuate the plant's natural flavor profile.
Yeah, and again, that's one of the reasons we can actually run New Millennium typically at a lower EC than you see some of these other companies, right? Because we're running it typically as high only it's about 1,000 ppm
because it's available.
2.0 EC because it's available, and products like these that actually go in, whether they're grabbing out of autumn or some other base, whether they're coupled with a Bloombastic, as you mentioned, a Green Sensation, Scietetics, we're working on a new bloom booster that's coming out. So you watch, we'll be coming with that as well. But the point of New Millennium is the grower control, right? Again, we're trying to put the control in your guys' hands. We're trying to say, hey, these are some amazing products, whether you take an additive-based approach, whether you do a gateway jug style, which is really how we put this company on the map, is Winter Frost. You know what I mean? I put a jar in my pocket. I went all over the country and all over the world and just said, hey, check this out. Whoa, what did that? Well, this is what I do. It was just a way to open up the door, and without going in and changing people's whole concept and whole recipe completely by able to grab some of these really high quality sleeper bottles, the Winter Frost, the Carbonaria, the Ruby Fulvic, the PK Appetite. If you want to put it on top of some salt that you've been running a long time and are comfortable with, by all means, and watch what's going to happen with your genetics. Watch the additional oil production. Watch the vigor.
And the oil. I mean, that's really the biggest
We are
thing.
oil farmers. Okay. We've talked about this. In fact, you know what? Put it on the list, Grambo. We got to get an oil farmer sticker. And in fact, speaking of Mr. Grambo, I'd like to take actually a second right here and just say thank you to our man behind the glass. He's actually not behind glass. He's right here. But I'd like to say thank you so much for coming in and really kind of making this thing work. He's a huge asset to this team, and he is behind there. He's as much involved as we are, even if we're on the mics more than he is. But you can see him working back there, folks. So thank you, Josh.
Here. And I believe I got voice this time. Thank you all the juggernauts out there giving me crap for running the show and not having my own damn mic turn.
Well, I told him from the beginning, I said, Grambo, you are one of the jug dealers.
Yep.
I am here to move. And I'm a big fan. I mean, you guys know me from the DGC and Scotty. Like we always say, like when we use Grow Dots, Winter Frost, that's your emergency brake. You got too much nutrition going. It's not senescent.
Shut her down, baby.
It is the one that you
it's
talk
a gateway
to people,
jug, dude.
You talk to people everywhere. And
you can steer up there. Gateway jug, Frost for ripening of superior trees. I'll be honest. That was harder to come up with. I realized, oh shoot, it's got to have an acronym. Uh-oh. And I literally pulled up to a dumpster in the Northeast, and you can't make this stuff up. I come up with the whole gateway jug concept because I used to, as a joke, call it the gateway drug. But I was like, I'm never going to put that in print. You know what I mean? I was like, haha. But what it did is it helped people get it. When I said that to somebody, they went, oh, okay.
It sticks.
It stuck.
Yeah.
And it was like they saw it as the entrance into the line.
You grew up, if you're anywhere near my age and you grew up.
Well, okay. So you do have to be at least 30 years old.
Nancy Reagan, baby.
I have busted this out on younger kids and it doesn't slap the same way. I promise you. But I'm driving to pick up my mom and I'm rolling through my head, gateway drug. I said, gateway jug. So I call Cole. And I said, Cole, what do you think about this? And he goes, it's fucking genius. And so we've kind of been rolling with that. But then I pull up the very next week. I'm thinking, hey, man, I got this cool concept, blah, blah, blah. I pull up to a dumpster and I see it right there, an old DARE sticker. It was on a dumpster. Yeah. And it said, Drug Awareness Resistance Education. And I realized that FROST now has to be something. So
what was the inspiration to this awesome show? Well, I was out behind a dumpster.
So here I was by a dumpster. Smoking a bowl.
I mean, it sounds like my teenage years.
Yeah, right. Wait, out of a pop can. Now we're really there. Okay. That's a kind
anything
of no. I would say that's the conclusion
though?
of the phosphorus portion of it. This is something that you guys are going to kind of see a flow. We've kind of been trying to break it into some sections. We want to start with that grow talk every time. Really get into it. Any feedback you guys have, we're always appreciative of.
We love the questions. And again, we just want I guess. One thing I have seen as a commercial cultivator and just seeing it on a very large scale is that we have stepped away from educating the cultivators, and
we're trying to fill a void. And by no means, again, we're sitting here still educating ourselves.
Dude, when I did the research for both these episodes, I definitely put some time into it, and it definitely showed me, hey, this is where it comes from. This is how it's done.
But here's the other thing. And again, I think some of this stuff, like conceptually and just technically is some of the more difficult stuff. We are going to be having other things, which we already talked about, things like Lee Biggs Law of the Minimum, which I think is huge to talk about. I think talking about signs versus symptoms when you're talking about, looking at plant pests and diseases. And these are just couple snippets, talking about biostimulants, talking about, other things like these topics are going to be vast. And by no means we're also open to ideas. If you guys have something that's out there, please, again, we want this to be very interactive, and even the whole kind of last part of the show is focused on listener interaction. So
we're gonna
please reach out.
I mean, and the list of guests that we have lined up is pretty extensive. We're gonna have some scientists. We're gonna have some people who can really kind of get down to the nitty gritty.
Because I think that's the other thing. Like I'll tell you right now, the two most difficult classes that I had in horticulture by far was organic chemistry and plant breeding. by far. And so, these are difficult concepts. These are not everyday concepts. But I do think books like, and we're going to give a nod here in a little bit to Jeff Lowenfels, and really we'll talk about the whole trilogy a little bit. I'm focusing on teaming with bacteria first, just because that was the original book.
That was the original book. I did not read the books in order.
and by no means are they meant to. In fact, he has teaming with
microbes, teaming with nutrients, teaming with fungi. I think teaming with these.
There's a newest one.
Yeah. He just released. I can't remember what it is, but he did just release one within the last year or two.
Yeah. So it is 4. It used to be a trilogy forever, but. Let's go on to current events. And typically we're going to focus current events in cannabis, just because in a lot of ways, this is what makes, most sense to us, being that this is the world that we operate, live, work, breathe in. We'll be the focus.
So we just had an election.
We just had an election.
Cycle. So that's always a big deal.
Timing's kind of good for us.
I know when it was Ready, Set, Grow, I had discussed the last election cycle, and I think at that point we might have been at 22, but now we just had Ohio legalize recreational cannabis. So,
number 24.
Not sure how everybody feels about that, but almost half of the United States has in some way legalized.
So here's the thing. I heard this, almost half. Really
crazy.
So
crazy.
No, but here's what blows me away. And obviously the medical too is well over half. That's like a 2/3 at this point. I don't have a number on that. Yeah. I mean, and maybe if our man behind the glass could even somehow figure that out quickly. But what's interesting to me and what I heard at one point in time, and I'm not sure if this is true or not, by the way, and I don't think it's very easy to just Google it. It's easier to Google medical states, that's for sure. But I have heard that as far as the federal government goes, if there's any law like cannabis legalization that goes over 25 states,
so
they are forced not to make it legal automatically, but they're forced to put it onto the floor.
I had heard that as well.
Maybe some of our law people out there could confirm or deny.
And I don't know, it's interesting.
Okay, there's the map. Ooh, wow.
It's interesting because you have states like Colorado where it's written into our state constitution.
Right.
So God forbid something were to happen here, Colorado is obligated to sue the federal government. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, it's an interesting.
Wow, look at that weird little belt. There's two belts. Two belts. So 41 states.
41 states have some version of medical marijuana.
And that's why we love having this guy behind here. Thank you, Grambo. Did you see how quick that was? So 41 states, baby.
I still, even looking at the map, I still think that Nebraska has maybe decriminalized in some way to the point where under an ounce isn't.
But this is not talking about decriminalization at all. Just to be clear, this is all just
medical recreation.
In fact, and I know you're right, Gabe, just from anecdotally some people that have had issues.
Because now you drive around Kansas.
And I'm from Iowa, and I can say they have the boof 3% and lower laws. So even though
it's on the list, it ain't really on the list.
It maybe shouldn't be.
Texas is medical?
Yeah, Texas has been medical for a while. Texas has actually been medical for a while. But look at those two little, you got Wisconsin on an island, which is actually one of the 3 states I haven't been to. So I got Wisconsin, Kentucky, and North Dakota. Those are the 3 states I haven't been to. I know Gabe's he's got pretty damn good lists.
Yeah, Wisconsin's big on the only one drinking. They're big microbreweries.
They are, and I believe
they fit into cultivation perfectly.
Statistically speaking, I'm pretty sure they drink more booze per capita than anybody in the country. Wisconsin.
I believe that.
No, I'm like 90% sure on that. Don't ask me why. Look, I am full of stupid facts and I don't know where I got them and I can't necessarily confirm or deny them. Although typically when they are looked up, they're right.
I mean, I think, on this map, the last you're going to see is Idaho, Wyoming, but everybody else.
Yeah.
Everybody else you're going to see.
Kansas, it's like, what are you doing? Making money. Yeah, okay. That's what they're making money on I-70 right there. That's what they're doing. They're
easy enough to go around nowadays. You just go down through Oklahoma and you can pretty much make it all the way.
Okay. Now let's jump on to the next one, the next current event, which this is one I picked out of because it's been something, it's a long time event. They claim it's not over, that they're just moving it, but real specifically, they are pulling out. The Emerald Cup cancels the Harvest Ball, which essentially they have like a Harvest Ball and now an Awards Ball, whatever. It used to all be at the Sonoma County Fairgrounds.
December. I actually, a couple years ago, I went straight from BizCon
to Emerald
A lot
of people did, and everybody got the Wook flu. Everybody got the Wook flu.
I did not get the Wook flu.
Well,
Being a Wook, I may be immune to the Wook flu.
That was literally like mid-COVID, and it was like, dude, people got lit up.
I think I went the year before that. I went with like Fletcher, Kind Bill.
Okay, then it was the year after. Then
Kyle
everybody
Cushman,
did it. Because same thing, it lined up. But man, I've been going to this thing for years, and I'll tell you, I also went back in the backpack days when it was straight like backpack trap style, which was a lot more fun before there was any, any separation and legalization
cool
or anything like that.
Super cool event. That part of Cali's awesome.
So I unfortunately look at that as a bit of a death knell. I don't think it's something that you just move it down to San Francisco now. You're taking the whole heart and soul out of the thing. It's out of Sonoma County. It's out of the fairgrounds. Like, dude, and I'll be honest, I went last year and
and another question that I would wonder is how does that affect Ego Clash? Because most of the time people come out, they do Ego Clash.
I forgot about that.
They do Ego Clash, and then they do.
Don't they usually do like
Emerald
Ego,
Cup.
like like Cannabis too? I feel like they do Ego Clash.
Cannabis, they do one at Cannabis.
But I'm just saying they follow events around and do it
as well. But they usually do one at Emerald Cup. So I'll be eager to see, because I'm not taking anything away from Ego Clash, but I don't know that people are going to travel all that way just to do Ego Clash.
No, and I think that's one of the things Ego Clash always did a really good job about was coupling it around events
100%,
because they knew people were going to be there.
They're going to have to pair up with like Hitman Dougie and do something on these. Which I'll be honest with you, I think an Ego Clash event on the East Coast would do unbelievably well. Well, there's,
we definitely favor these more small events. You know what I mean? Obviously we did the Cultivate event recently, which was great. These are the kind of events we've been looking for. We tend to do a lot of smaller shows out on the East Coast, both you and I. I always go down into Florida in February.
Well, and it gets back to that. It gets back to that where we started all this stuff.
Yeah, it was always a little bit more like pop-up style, you know what I mean? It was always a little bit more underground. It didn't have to be this huge thing. And then it became these it became these deals where if you got enough people in one space, then like we could all thankfully we got an audio guy back there that knows how to get those clangs out. It was one of those things where if you get enough people together, then they can't bust us for smoking weed. I remember and I can't remember the name of the day. It was some day where like 200 cities nationwide or worldwide in 2001 did like basically
National smoke out. I think
And so we went to, we drove from St. Joe, Missouri, all the way to St. Louis, stayed with a buddy of mine, rolled like 50 joints and walked around the Capitol building with the cops stopping the traffic and everything. And then I was like, whoa, this is the only way you can smoke weed in public. You know what I mean? And that was the same thing even with the original Max Yield shows and all that. Is get enough people here. Now, nobody say weed. You're the fuck out of here. But if you tomatoes. If you just sit there and play the game, well, we just, play the game. Well, here's what's even more interesting. I mean, one of the bigger shows that's, in the world is actually in Berlin, while Berlin is still
Good segue.
And Berlin has some of the strictest still to this day cannabis. However,
so let's talk about the next subject, Germany legalization. Go ahead.
Ring. Okay, so Germany over the last month has been debating marijuana, cannabis. I hate even to say marijuana, cannabis legalization. And so there's a final vote that's actually scheduled for later this month. It's happening. People also know if they're looking, all of Europe looks at Germany. If Germany goes, there's a good chance that Austria goes right along with them. And then there's even a possibility that Czech Republic
and Portugal are all kind of quasi.
It's, but that's Western Europe. So now we're talking, Central to Eastern Europe. So this is, and in fact, I have a girl, Anya, shout out to Anya, that I met at Cannabis, that she's opening the first cannabis social club in East Germany. That's something that like I never thought.
Do you think about East Germany when I was a kid?
What, dude? We grew up with there was a wall there.
My grandmother lived like with the wall in her backyard and tanks dripping through. So.
Right. I mean, so Germany, man. I remember even when my wife went and did a European tour years ago. You could go into Germany on the train and they could actually come and swab you. And if you were coming out of Amsterdam, that was very common, obviously. So you got these damn Gestapo, basically.
I don't even want to get into the dumb shit I've done flying around the world with weed and stuff like that.
Right.
And to see,
It's like, what?
Well, it's funny because I see Thailand, and not for nothing.
Right.
Shout out to Brett, who's actually running some NewMill over there. Jair's going to be over there.
Folks. We got it out there.
They actually are having a really cool event, Thai Terps, at the end of the month. But
Cool.
they're having a little Terp Quest thing. But a little small shout out there. But I mean, it's definitely interesting because I tell folks, like, when I was in Thailand, that was like 5 years in jail, or you better at least have 1,500 in your pocket to hand the cop.
When I was,
and hope it's only one.
When I was there 20 years ago, I remember getting drunk enough one night where I did ask, and a guy was very cool, but very straight up. He's like, "No, man.
I got stopped.
Do not fuck around with it."
And I got stopped. I had smoked weed on an island, Koh Chang, and I left the island. I didn't bring any with me. And I came back to Bangkok, and I get off the bus, and I'm walking through the bus station in Bangkok, and I got 5 cops, and they just stopped me.
Well, yeah.
And they're like, "Hey, we're searching your bag." And I'm like, "But I'm like, I didn't do anything. Like, what are you talking about?" They're like, "We don't care. You're white, dude.
Yeah,
we're searching the bag." And they go through, and luckily for me, I was smart enough. I wasn't carrying anything. It's one of the few times in my life where I have not smoked cannabis for a consistent amount of time, but
Smart.
It's not worth going to a Thai prison.
Well, right. Well, man, and there's a book. Maybe actually, you know what? I'll use that as one of our suggested readings coming up. It talks about a guy that went to Thai prison that he actually was feeding the rats the rice rations that he was getting and fattening the rats up so then he could eat those and actually get protein. That's Thai prison.
Real talk.
That's Thai prison. Okay?
Real talk.
Okay, so that's current events for this particular episode. Again, I thought some real interesting. We got Ohio. We've got Germany coming on. I really think it's going to happen.
Yeah, you're going to see a lot of stuff.
And the Emerald Cup took a dump. So that's, in a nutshell, that's what we got. Strain talk. Let's do a little strain talk.
What do you got, dude? I know this is one that's a little now close to the heart.
Well, it is. And I would say right now, and anybody that wants pictures of this, hit us up directly on Instagram. You can hit us up with the Jug Dealers, things like that.
At Jug Dealers on Instagram.
At Jug Dealers on Instagram. Hit us up. We're trying to keep this. I don't even want to jinx this, but YouTube has been being nice to us. So we're gonna talk about them. We're gonna be good boys. We're gonna talk about the strain. I have some really great pictures of it. It is a strain that is close to my heart and is something that's new and something I've been very proud of. That I did also put in the Cultivate Cup. I think it was number 60. It was either 60 or 61. One of those. Dead purple. If you want pictures, hit up Graham Beasy. He'll get. And
we'll have it on the Jug Dealers IG page.
But yes, we will. And yeah, actually, thank you. We will post it up there. So what is it? So again, it was called Magic Mushroom. It's a purple unicorn male from Bodie, which was selected out of about 500 beans, I believe. And I'll mention who actually was behind this here in a minute. That purple unicorn is Chemdog Type's Blackberry Widow. Cross that with the white truffle from Bee Leaf. Mm-hmm. People are familiar with that white truffle. Although I will say the white truffle looks incredible, great structure, not a ton of terps. So that was what was really nice about this, but that thing is a selection of Gorilla Butter, which is peanut butter breath times GG4. I'm a GG4 fan. Who's not? So it was procured in, of all places, Florida from Abstract Genetics, and that's at Abstract_Genetics_official. If you want to check out some of their work, small group of guys doing really, really fun, cool genetic work down in Florida. Shout out to the, to the small guys that are really doing great work.
For sure.
Some of them. So
for sure. I mean, the one thing it's nice with the small guys is a lot of them are, they're focused on what they're focused, and they're not.
These guys are passionate.
Yeah, and they're not trying to fill that hype train. They're trying to fill something that they really enjoy. I mean,
yep.
And that's something you want to see, man, because the hype train peters out.
Yep. So we've got some good examples of it. So hit up Mr. Grimbo if you want to check those out. And this will be something that, we like talking about strains. Again, we're trying to be good boys, but we'll get into that as the YouTube allows more and more things. But let's go ahead and get into the suggested reading. You had brought in, obviously, as part of the trilogy, the Teaming with Nutrients, and we wanted to start with
the right book, though.
Teaming with Microbes.
Mm-hmm.
Our friend Eugene Monroe did mention that specifically when he was on the podcast a couple times ago. So I've been wanting to talk about this. Again, it's one of those deals, and we'll post a little write-up about it. I've got it, but I'm not going to read through it. Reality is this is one of those things that I think smart gardeners really understand, that like there's a lot that's going on in the substrate. There's a lot that's going on. There's a lot of really interesting associations. And one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this, because exactly where we started off in talking about these organic phosphorus inputs, but the fact that it takes time and energy.
Yep. And people have to understand too, there's a lot of interaction between bacteria and fungus and microorganisms,
protozoa and all kinds of other single-celled organisms.
Between the rhizosphere and the plant and the nutrient uptake, there's a lot of different ways to do things. There's a lot of different ways where you see people using hypochlorous acid, and you have people basically sterilizing the soil. I'm not against that. I'm just saying that there's different ways to do things. Just like you can grow our method, you can grow living soil.
Well, and even with teaming with microbes, it leans a little bit more towards talking about how chemical fertilizers destroy.
Well, and that's kind of where I'm going. That's where I'm going.
I felt it. But again, we take that synganic approach, right? Take a very responsible synthetic approach, put in the organics as well in a potted situation. So our stuff is typically not going into a field situation either. And I think a lot of the things we're talking about in here would be more of, let's call it home garden and horticulture agronomy type situation, which ours is a little more specialized, right? And I do like that immediate availability with that lingering quality, residual aspect.
Well, and Jeff really does a great job of digging into it. He makes it readable. Yeah, he doesn't use a bunch of stuff where you read the page and you're like, I got to read that 3 more times.
Yeah, you don't have to have the dictionary right next to the book.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that's one of the things. Jeff is a former lawyer. Great talks. If you ever get a chance to go look,
I've actually seen him.
Yeah,
I've actually seen him in Baltimore.
So
you probably had him on the show.
He's a personal friend, and maybe
we're hoping
it's a maybe. So we have goals here, folks. We'd love to get Jeff on. He's a hell of a lot of fun to talk to. Every time he comes to Denver,
that'd be like a 3-parter.
Yeah. Oh, I think it would ride.
But the whole, that's the whole thing. Is we really we want to
every time he comes to Denver, I make sure that that I hook him up with some very nice NewMill grown herb. And he's always takes that. Well, I shouldn't say where he takes it, but wherever.
Does what he does.
He does
that
what he
does. The coolest thing about you guys, if I say, it's like just hanging out with you guys, the amount I have. You guys know some of the coolest cannabis people. And the idea is like, oh yeah, when Jeff Lowenfield stops by, we always say hi. It's like, that's crazy. So subscribe, juggernauts. These guys
come and get it.
A lot of people in cannabis. Yeah, these guys know way more. It's insane. So
we're definitely working the gas
Jeff Lowenfield.
Yeah, dude, Jeff's awesome. Shout out to Jeff Lowenfeld in general as being somebody that's been a great supporter of cannabis. Is a very interesting writer, obviously, and somebody that I think is really into the plant. So if somebody's looking to expand some of their understanding and how some of these processes are going, which is also why, and don't be surprised if you see the next trilogies coming out on the next episode, because this stuff all really coincides on what's the stuff we're talking about, and it's going to explain it a hell of a lot better than we are. I mean, there was a beautiful section all on phosphorus in there that I've encouraged people to go and take a look at. In fact, that's probably what we'll have on the next one, is teaming with nutrients, but this one's teaming with microbes. So go get it. Maybe, oh man, now I'm thinking like wild shit. We should get some signed copies from Jeff to be able to give away on the show.
Oh yeah.
Jot that down. Jot that down, Grabo. Jot that down.
That's crazy.
Okay. So another thing that's close to Gabe and Mai's heart.
That time of year, baby.
Okay, who's got the skis waxed? Who's got them waxed? Who's ready to ride? I don't actually have the phantom wax, so I didn't have to wax them.
There's a couple places, dude.
But I don't have any bindings.
There's a couple places open already. I was back on the East. It's funny. I went to Florida for Halloween, and meanwhile it's snowing here.
Right.
And I was like, all right, that's good.
Dude, driving down the Front Range today, coming down here to Denver, it was like, the everything was just white and beautiful.
Yeah.
So we've got A Basin open, we've got Keystone open, we've got Winter Park open, and we've got Eldora open. So only 4.
Breck opens tomorrow.
Winter Creek opens this weekend. What else? Vale opens this weekend. Copper, Loveland, Perg. All that's within.
Vale opens this weekend?
November 10th.
Yeah.
Tomorrow.
Dude.
we do things live.
I might have to go next
like
week.
3 days ago or something. I don't know. It's open now.
Yeah, by the time the show drops, it'll be open. Either way, it opens November 10th. That's awesome, man. I mean, that's definitely, we're hoping, looking at the charts, they say this year is a super El Nino. So
that means Southwest Colorado has a pretty good shot of getting slammed.
Yeah.
Usually in those years, there's definitely been a lot of times where it's been over 500 inches.
Yep.
So we're going to have to see what happens. Shout out to Wolf Creek, baby.
They always say in the San Juan, they get 500 inches. They may get it all in March, but they get it.
Well, it comes in heavy waves. It comes in heavy waves.
I've had some amazing times.
What is, and I guess I'm kind of alluded to mine. I would say my favorite ski area, and this is for a lot of reasons. I used to work there. I've got a cabin outside of there. My favorite is Wolf Creek. Shout out to Wolf Creek. And that's my favorite in Colorado.
It's amazing.
It's amazing. I would say in the U.S., do you have a favorite? And I know you lived in Montana for a good while and have had some opportunity to ski the West.
I mean, for extremes, for really getting after it, I gotta say Crested Butte is Crested Butte is the only place that I have ever been scared inbounds. But
have you skied Taos?
No, but I'm a snowboarder. And
you can snowboard Taos.
You can now. But most of the time,
historically speaking,
most of the time that I've been a snowboarder, you haven't been able to do it. Bunch of stuff in Utah that
I'm about to say Alta, Snowbird, Brighton.
I've only skied.
I've only done the small ones. I've never done the Deer Valley, Park City, any of that.
So I've only done the North Valleys, which is Snow Basin, Powder Mountain, and all that stuff.
I haven't done any of that.
I did my bachelor party at Powder Mountain. We got 8 feet of snow. They had to close the mountain the last day. So quality of snow is amazing. I mean, Whistler Blackcomb, I'll be honest with you. I've skied.
That was going to be my next question, is if you had done Canada.
Well, I've skied. It's funny. I've skied 12 or 15 days at Whistler Blackcomb. I've skied 11 of those days at Blackcomb and 1 day at Whistler. I didn't really like Whistler. Just as a snowboarder.
Sure.
And then I've actually done a day of heli skiing up in Whistler Blackcomb as well, in the backcountry. Sure. And that may have been the greatest day of my life.
It sounds wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, it's, Colorado, we're blessed when we get snow. Steamboat last winter was amazing.
Steamboat was a great last winter.
Crested Butte.
Honestly, everywhere got pretty damn
Vail's always.
Bay Basin stayed open way late.
Yeah. Vail's always incredible. I'm psyched to get the Vail Pass this year.
The only thing I hate about Vail is the crowds, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's just, and I hate lines. Again, that's one of the reasons I love Wolf Creek. Without getting the whole, in fact, forget about Wolf Creek, folks. You don't want to go there.
Yeah.
It's a dump. I'm going to tell you right now.
Honestly, if you're a snowboarder, it is a pain in the ass.
I was going to say there's new things there that make that different, but you're right. You're totally right. You're totally right.
It's funny. I went down there with Matt Bickle for Christmas, I think 2 or 3 years ago. And they got 18 inches a day for 3 days in a row. And
then it'll go bluebird. Yeah. Straight bluebird.
You're just
oh.
Dude, it was one of the greatest Christmas. Yeah, you're just 18 inches of snow on Christmas with another 18 underneath it. Yeah,
Why not? Okay, so we do the next section, which we're not actually going to do this time, but we will be doing IG questions. So we'll be doing some shout outs. You'll see it on Jug Dealer.
Yeah, we want to get some more. We want to get some more listener interaction.
Yeah, this is listener interaction aspect of it. So please, and you'll see Grambo kind of reaching out for that interaction. But even still, even on the comments on this, if you guys have specific questions, if you guys have some specific things, even if we can wrap it back around and answer some things, specifically on Phosphorus, for example, on the next show to start things. So
and we'll be doing a couple giveaway things too. So
yes, we will. And these giveaways are going to be, obviously we've already talked about, so I guess, and this is part of it as well. I'll do it just a little bit early. But we are going to do a Slicium giveaway. We're going to get 5 500 ml bottles.
I was going to say, and we just talked to the boss people. The Clonex giveaway.
Well, that's a great. So there's going to be some Clonex we're going to give away. And what we're going to want to do is we're going to need you folks to play along a little bit. Go ahead and hit the follow button on @JugDealers Podcast and also @58. And we will pick 5 random people for both the Clonex and 5 random people for 500 mils.
Both on
Silicium.
That's no joke.
Silicium and Clonex.
Oh,
and Clonex. And do we want to put a number? Are we going to get to what do we got to get to? 350 followers on Instagram? I mean, what do we want to do? Let's push some people.
Let's get, for this time, we'll just go loose. We'll get as many people, just follow us over there. Where do we get all the plant shots? If you want to see some of that what was it? Magic Mushroom?
Magic Mushroom.
So go check it out over there. Clonex.
And we'll do Clonex and Slicium. It'll be a 500 ml Slicium, and we'll do some Clonex gel along with that.
Awesome.
Clonex is a good friend of the show. It is something that's available in larger quantities.
Dude,
for
I've
us.
been using it for years.
Who
and
hasn't? I mean, that's a staple of this industry.
For the markets it's legal in, I would suggest it.
And I guess why not, let's talk about those supporter shout outs. This is part of this show as well. So first and foremost, Clonex, a supporter of ours for a long time. Thank you, Clonex. We really appreciate everything over the years. You guys have always been a great friend and supporter. RF303, he's a gentleman here in Denver, always been a big New Millennium supporter. You know who you are.
Always good to see him out.
Always good to see him at the events. Always at the stores. Got to see him at Cultivate. Always has got excellent genetics. Does a really good job at the plant. In fact, he's also got a wonderful smoke shop here in Denver. It's called Mystic Smoke Shop. It's on the west side of Denver, Lakewood area. Go check it out. He's got some great glass in there. He's got Fago, like 20 different. He's got Fago, bro.
Some good Fago.
I'll be honest. I had the pineapple last time. I was like, this shit is good. So shout out to Mystic Smoke Shop and
RF303 all over the store.
Yeah. So go in, support your local jug dealers. Get out there, Mystic Smoke Shop, and then So Good Denver.
So Good Denver, that's the homies. That's Quinn. Those guys have been. Those guys were using New Millennium. We got them trying the Scietetics right now. So there's actually going to be some Scietetics grown flower on the market here, hopefully in the next month or so. Yeah. So we gave it to them a month ago, so they got a month to go.
Sure.
So that's going to be pretty cool. Scietetics is the stuff we have coming out in the, early Q1 of next year. We'll be talking more about that stuff in the future, but it's for all the salty boys who want to try out different clean salts. So we got that stuff coming. We hear y'all. So we want to help y'all out. And our final shout out was we were going to shout out Growers Paradise in Virginia.
Yeah. We got shout outs as well. So Growers Paradise, which you're going to see. I don't know exactly what day that'll be, but
I think it's going to be Monday. But after
what
that,
day is this though?
The show is going to be dropping Tuesday. So
Gabe will be out there here very soon. Also, shout out to Hydroculture. Shout out to Urban Roots. Shout out to Northern Roots. A lot of roots.
Yep.
And that's kind of across the country. Northern Roots is out there in Redding, California. Wonderful supporters of us forever. Urban Roots down in Tampa, Florida. Some of my best friends in the world, and a wonderful shop. Go in and see them. Hydroculture
they're in Frederick. They actually have two stores. They have one in Frederick and I think one in Manassas.
And that's Virginia?
That's Virginia, okay. Yeah. So those guys, between them and Growers Paradise, they're holding down.
Which is Richmond, Virginia, correct?
Yeah, that's Richmond. So those guys are far enough that if you're going to go to one, you go to the other. But those guys definitely are holding it down. And the nice thing with all those guys in both of those shops is they've all been using it. They all know the products really well.
They do. They know how to sell it. They know how to put it into other programs.
Matt, Sam, Josh, Paul, all those guys. Those guys are all great guys. And like I said, they use it. They know what's up. So shout out to all those guys. We really appreciate the support, especially in those markets. We appreciate the smaller stores supporting us. We like to support the smaller stores.
So if you do have events, things like that, if there is small cups, things like that, we can't ever guarantee anything, but please keep us in the know. Let us go out there, invite us to places. You never know where the jug dealers might show up. So we're going to get this sucker wrapped up. I will say we're going to have a segment that is harvested nug shots. And I've been thinking on the fly here, Josh. I think what we'll probably do is talk about it on here, shout the people out so they can go to their Instagram and check it out. And then we'll also post it on Jug Dealers.
We'll post it on
so
IG.
that's what we're going to do for the strain talk. And I think for the nug shots. So everybody
that's a great idea, Jayhawk, dude.
I'm thinking it.
Yeah. Well, and it's funny because we're trying to be good boys,
right? Well, I mean, as long as, and then as soon as I don't know, people or YouTube doesn't like us anymore.
As soon as they change the rules and we can start being bad boys,
then we'll do that. We'll do that. And then giveaway ideas too, as I was thinking tonight too. Obviously, we've got our own ideas. As I'm wearing this one-off New Millennium, I had a random idea one day. I'm like, hey, what if we did one-off tie dyes?
Yeah, and we could. We got the connection.
Get the people's colors, get their size, and actually do one. So anyway, you're going to be seeing cool things coming from us. We're going to have merch that's going to be up on the Jug Dealers podcast website. I'm saying, we're going to get a lot of that shit kind of going by the end of the year.
We'll be building out a store right on the YouTube page. So we're able to, one of the reasons we have to be good boys is YouTube is giving us a few little extra benefits, like a shop page right on the YouTube page. So yeah, if you guys like stuff, you can throw tips in there. If you want to throw a tip at the boys, a little question, comment, suggestion, that's all good. Super chat.
Chuck and Nip will take a tip.
That's not required. Just to subscribe, enjoy all this cannabis information. That's all we ask of you guys.
And if
we're just here for the people, you know, it's cool that YouTube is liking us, but the best part about it is being that we're powered by 5.8, we're in our own jug den. This is something
we saw some holes, man. We saw some holes that needed to be filled, and we kind of decided, well, it was better to fill them.
It's for us and it's for the people. Now, let me make no bones about it. I sell jugs. I am a jug dealer. This is part of what I do, but I also think that, through education and everything else is really how we, can work on gaining that authenticity. We use this stuff. You guys know, you've seen us out there out and about. We've been doing this a long time. So thank you, folks. Wrapping it up from the Jug Den. I don't know what episode number this is, but that's Josh's idea.
7 or 8.
That's his job to put in the title or whatever. So not my deal. Thank you guys very much.
Peace out.
Peace out.
Thank
We'll see
you
you next time.
We love y'all.